Today I want to show you guys how you can win games in mediocre tanks, and we're starting with one of the most mediocre tanks in the game, the Type 58, and how you can turn a match around using a tank, that isn't the most overpowered. You see loads of videos on some of the best tanks out there, and today I want to focus on some tips that you can use in your everyday tanks that aren't going to be those super good ones that you find along the way of going through the tech tree, things like the T67 for example, and how you can combat this. And of course we're going to be looking at two different tanks today. This is a low tier vehicle, so I wanted to get a range. We've then got a tier 8 vehicle in a tier 10 matchup in the next kind of segment of the video. So hopefully you guys are enjoying it, and of course hopefully you're going to learn a couple things that will serve you well, and if you are going to enjoy it or at least find it useful, or you want me to do more videos like this where we look at how you can perform well, then let me know in the comment section down below whilst we get abused by a Burt. Anyway, having considered that this tank is a Chinese medium that isn't particularly very good, and that, we were working our way towards getting some of the heavy tanks from playing this vehicle, even though it's a medium, leads on to some heavies, it plays in a specific kind of way, and that is that it doesn't have very much alpha damage, and so you have to really work on providing yourself with loads of different opportunities where you can outplay opponents. Now, yeah, of course you'd have to do that. You have to do that in every tank. But when you are playing in these tanks that aren't particularly great, you have to really play on some of the things that you might not have to when it comes to some of the other vehicles in the game. So what am I doing here in this specific game to try and get as much damage as possible, and of course try and carry for my team? Well, it's coming through at points where I can create a crossfire for my team. Now, as you can see, a lot of my teammates that are pushed on the northeastern side of the map, they are sitting in the location where they're just getting basically farmed by both the M41 HMC, and they're also getting derped by other tanks that are sniping in the back alongside the KB3. But what we do by coming into the middle is provide a crossfire where we can start to deal with things like the KB3, albeit he is now, turning towards us, so it's unlikely we're going to be able to pen. Now, we're getting still annoyed by the Burt here, who is just loving us at this point, but we remain undetected now, or at least go back undetected, and we can try and maneuver ourselves to find a nice little position to take out this KB3, since we need him gone to be able to play in the way that we want to play. Now, we're loading some of the premium rounds to try and deal with this KB3, and in doing so he, YOLOs out, and essentially what I'm trying to hope for here is that our artillery on our team ends up finishing him off, since we don't have the best pen in this tank, and we're really going to have to hope that the enemy artillery don't deal with us. But as you'll see in this game, it's 11 against 7, so this is a losing game by all standards of measurement. I'm in a lower tier vehicle. There's a lot of tanks left on the enemy team that are still pretty healthy. We're down by now 5 tanks, and of course I've only done 660 damage, but this is where you can really learn quite a few things in this later stages, is that although you might think that the battle is over, you can still come away with ridiculous results, and all it takes is a little bit of learning and of course predicting what the opponents are going to do. Now, they are pushing towards the artillery piece, things like this Leo. We now have a Basotto in the middle who we've got to deal with, and because we have the fast fire rate, we can go for damage as well as being able to go for a little bit of spotting on potentially these tanks. Now, we had to deal with the Basotto, so it was worth risking it to try and get one shot. Unfortunately, we don't manage to hit the Leo here, and now we really need to start dealing some damage to these opponents that are pushing towards our teammates. Now, we've brought the disadvantage of tanks back, so it's no longer 11 against 6, it's now 7 against 4, so at least we aren't in such a dire situation. And without me moving into that location here, we wouldn't have been able to set up the crossfire to really deal with some of the opponents. So it's all about opening up as many crossfire locations as you can in the game, especially when you're playing in a terrible tank, because you simply cannot just sit there in front of overpowered vehicles and hope that you're going to be able to deal well. Now, we're going towards the Burt. He's making his move. He wants to get up close and personal. He wants to get into a position to hit me probably, and so we're going to try and take him out, or at least deal as much damage to him before the game ends, because ultimately, even if you have a game where you end up losing, you're still going to have fun. Now, the T28 could hit us here, but we've got to make the play to try and get rid of this Burt. He most likely is going to hit us. He wasn't actually paying attention, and he doesn't manage to get one off. But great thing is that the T28 doesn't have a turret, so it's not the most important tank to get rid of. In fact, the most important is to get rid of tanks that are A, fast enough to outflank me, or B, have really high alpha damage that are going to be able to be dealing damage from afar, or tanks that are just really overpowered, like the T67. And you can see us hitting him here. We've got a KV3. He hits me on the move with HE. I don't even know why he's firing HE, but apparently he is. And there you go. We've got 2,146 damage done, but there is still plenty of chance for the enemy team to win this game. I mean, we are at the disadvantage here. I'm trying to go for the shot on the KV3. I stay a little bit longer because I want to pen this guy, and we actually do, which is perfect. KV3 was the real chance that the enemy team had to deal with us. And given the fact that I've got me and this T67, it's not looking all too good. There's still some high health tanks. So what do you have to do when you're in this situation? I haven't traded the best at the end of the game, but we needed to take a few hits, use our hit points to remove the most dangerous ones here, and then we can deal with some of the other ones. Now, what I'm doing here is providing vision, or at least hopefully providing vision, to find out where that Valiant is, because the Valiant, although it might not be the fastest, it can create a crossfire onto us if we're trying to deal with the T28 HTC, because remember, T28 HTC doesn't have a turret, so if we can get around him, we can basically farm him for his health entirely. And if we find ourselves up against the Valiant, who actually cannot spot us right now, we can deal quite a bit of damage to him, and this is exactly what you want. The enemy T28 is actually pushing towards our teammate here. We put one into him. Can we get another one? Yes, we can. We go for the tracks, but of course it doesn't hit. The Valiant's trying to hit us now, and because it has such a fast fire rate, he does manage to get two on us. So not brilliant from that regard, but you know, sometimes you make mistakes. You just have to adapt during your game to come away with those results. Now, we do manage to respot the Valiant. We've now got a T67 who's helping us out now with this T28, because the T28 is coming towards me, and of course in doing so he's providing his backside for our friendly T67. So once again, it's this crossfire that is just constantly happening within this game, and it really highlights, at least when I was playing it, how important it is to create those crossfires with your teammates. And you'll see loads of people complaining about the team and how bad they are and how the team are absolutely useless and they're really annoying to have to deal with, but in fact a lot of the times even the worst player on the game, you can make use out of them and you can make their day easier if you are a player that knows about how to create a crossfire, because you can end up making an opponent turn towards you who can't hit you and you're hiding, and then your teammate, who may have otherwise just been taken out from full health or whatever, can actually start dealing a little bit of damage, or you can trade their hit points by creating that crossfire and you improve your chances of winning a lot more. So a lot of the time, people that are complaining about the team just don't want to accept the fact that they could have played better in the game, and myself, I've played awfully in the past. I mean, I still do occasionally, but a hell of a lot less, especially when I've considered that I've decided to, you know, stop blaming the team when we end up losing and actually thinking, how could I have won that game a little bit better? And that is what has made me a much better player overall, and how I've been able to get to the 60-something% win rate that I've currently got, and been averaging, you know, anywhere from like 4,500 to 5,500 WN8 consistently when I play a decent amount of games. So of course the M41 here trying to move up and deal some damage to me. Now this is a bit dangerous because he could actually hit me here, but he continues to move, and there you go, easy damage done. So we pick up the enemy artillery piece. That is probably the most dangerous out of the two, since he could potentially bombard us with a random shell, and we're only on 47 hit points, so it could go pretty nastily. Now, what I'm thinking here at the end of the game is the enemy Valiant, he has the hit point advantage, he has the reload advantage, he can deal damage quite easily to me. So what I want to do is provide some distance and use the vision range that this tank has over the Valiant, because what does that mean? Well, essentially we can outspot this guy pretty much 9 times out of 10, and we can also hide in a bush, which makes it even harder for him to be able to spot. So what do? I come up into this location, and this provides a decent amount of vision to find out where this Valiant is, and from here we can just sit and wait and hope this guy is going to push towards us. And in this period of downtime, you can understand really is that you don't always have to be super aggressive. Yes, some games where you are dealing a ton of damage, you actually have to pull back and reassess the situation, because if I just go in against the Valiant, he may or may not just have an angle, whereas if I force him to come back to the base, or at least chase me or try to chase me, I'm going to have a much better chance of actually winning. I'm not going to be able to cap in the time it takes for him to get back to the cap circle. He's going to be able to do that. He was close enough to the cap circle to come back, so we can't have that option where we can just sit in a cap circle and win the game. So we have to outplay this guy, and in doing so all we have to do is just sit in a bush. So there's a lot of players that would have just YOLO'd into the Valiant hoping that he would have been able to deal with him, and of course in doing that you may also lead to the fact that you get taken out by the artillery or whatever it might be. But we see here the Valiant has pushed up. We end up not even getting spotted here, and we can just basically farm this guy up. Can we get the next one in? He's going to be in the same location. Yes, we can. 3,300 damage done, 5 enemies taken out, and 662 assistance damage as well, so that's obviously a victory there. And yeah, 2,157 base XP, which is pretty decent. So yeah, pretty good game overall, and hopefully you guys found that useful. Let's have a look at another video, or at least replay, that we can showcase to you guys. The next part of this video looks at the French Tier 8 heavy tank that is well known for being fairly mediocre, and we're going to see why you could make tanks like this work, as well like you saw with the Type 58 in the first replay, and how even when you are in the bottom tier games, of course this being a tier 10 game, we can still make it work. And hopefully it's going to be useful to at least some people who are wondering, how can I improve? Why am I the one that always seems to get the bad RNG, or whatever you might attribute your loss to, and of course how you can counteract, dealing less and less damage, or at least coming bottom of the team or middle of the team, and you want to improve yourself so that you can consistently come in the top. Because all it is, this game is just experience and learning as quickly as possible, so you don't have to suffer as much with coming bottom of the team all the time. Or if you are interested in coming bottom of the team all of the time, then you don't have to listen to me in this video. And this is not the overall guide as to how you can definitively become a better player. It's just a few tips that I found, and of course having a critical look at some of the gameplay, some of the mistakes that I make, as well as some of the benefits of what I've experienced throughout playing World of Tanks. So I'm not trying to be the the god of how to get better at World of Tanks, that's for sure. And I'm sure that some of you actually are probably better players than me, and you can come up with some other things that you feel like people can learn, or at least learn from the games in World of Tanks. So straight off the bat, what we're doing here is we come to the middle of the castle. I was hoping that we could get some free, easy shots of damage, because easy shots of damage at the beginning of the game are what you need when playing in your bottom tier tanks, especially ones that aren't particularly very good. And that's going to give you the best chance of getting some large amounts of damage in the long run and come top of the team, even when you're playing in those bottom tier tanks, doing more damage than a lot of the tanks that are supposedly the overpowered ones 2 tiers higher. But I guess that if you just pick an overpowered tank, you instantly become better. Although, you stick a monkey inside of a car and it's probably gonna crash. But there we go. Don't know what that analogy was, but Anyway, we move. With the AMX65T, we've managed to pick up 19 damage. Brilliant start. And of course, as I said, picking up early damage is a surefire way to have a pretty decent game. Yeah, we're not having a great start, but the key thing is that although you might think you're having a terrible game, you can always suddenly change that really easily. And when you kind of think about how enemy players are going to be playing, or how overconfident players may get when they start to push and they start making mistakes, you can capitalize that, and essentially all you have to do is play very safe but make sure that you're in positions to counter them. Because you saw there, the AMX50B thought he was going to be able to just push. Turns out he's not able. We get a free shot quite easily into him, and you just have to really be searching for those shots of damage within all of your games, and that is, you know, going to give you maybe 1, maybe 2 extra hits every single game. But when you compile that over, you know, the course of hundreds of games, you're suddenly doing a ton more damage, and you're going to impact the games a lot more. And over that, you know, 100 games, 200 games, you know, it's going to make a massive difference to your win rate. And if that's what you're after, it is going to just generally make you a better player, because you're getting more experience at shooting at targets on the move, opening up opportunities, finding out where the common spots on maps are, and yeah, you'll suddenly learn a ton more from just basically positioning yourself in your lower tier tanks. Don't just camp in a corner in the back of the map hoping that your tier 10s do the work, because 9 times out of 10, if you start relying on your team, it's not going to end up very well. And yeah, that's my overall opinion on trying to play teamwork. But you understand from my previous gameplay is that if you can, you know, use your team to be able to win the game, then that is perfect. You know, creating crossfires, dealing damage, and hopefully being able to just get that extra bit in during your games. Now, you saw there that the enemy FV was an easy target to pick up some extra damage, and you'll see that we haven't lost any health, but we've done 1200 damage. So in a tier 8 tank in this sort of matchup, that is not a bad result. And we've also been able to pick up assistance, because when you're in the low tier vehicles, even if you can't actually deal any damage, if you're going for tracks and damage and you only end up tracking people, you can get a ton of assistance. And assistance damage is what is going to carry you and actually help out your team somewhat pretty well, because even if you're not dealing damage, you can be really annoying to opponents. You can track them, you can end up making your teammates be able to hit a person that would have evaded any of the shots if you hadn't tracked them, etc. So these are all things that you can do in your own gameplay to hopefully deal more damage and secure a much better game for yourself. And of course, if you're going for marks of excellence, assistance damage is one of the key ways that the top players will take both the damage that they're dealing and the combined damage from assistance, and that is how they can really end up just boosting past most players and having a massive impact in the game as well. Because although you don't have to have, you know, the biggest damage scores, if you have a huge combined damage score where you're dealing almost as much damage as you are assisting, you're going to go up way more than if you were to get, you know, an extra 1,000 damage or something like that. If you're dealing 4,000 damage total and you get 3,000 assist, it's going to weigh up more than if you were to get, you know, 5,000 damage and no assist. So sometimes it's worth actually trying to pick up that assistance, and playing very passively is not going to enable you to do it, and you're going to end up, you know, not getting as much experience from being on the front lines as you would if you just sit in the back of the map when you're in those low tier games. So my advice to anyone thinking about how they can improve is just try and go in, because 90% of the time you're not going to learn anything if you get taken out at the end of the game because your team have been steamrolled by the opponents. Whereas if you're towards the front and you understand, you know, sometimes I've got to try and make a play even when I'm 2 tiers lower, you get the experience of fighting up close and personal, learning how to aim, learning the weak points. You just get so many more room for opportunities, and I think that is really missed within like 90% of players in the game. They just sit back and they hope that their team is going to do everything for you. You know, reality check, your team aren't going to do everything for you, and 90% of the time you've got to do something to be able to get damage yourself. So that is what I learned when I was playing World of Tanks, is that, yeah, trusting other people in this game, it usually ends up getting you killed or having a terrible game. So why not try and at least make opponents trust you as a player rather than you trust them? Or your teammates even, not opponents. I don't know what was going on there. But either way, what we do here is we spot the E4. Did we get any assistance damage? No. But did we now know where he is? Yes. And that means that, you know, if he does get hit or anything like that, then we're going to be able to deal an extra bit of damage. We go for the tracking shot there. We don't manage to hit it. It's fine. It doesn't matter all too much. And so all I'm doing here is just being a bit of a nuisance, hopefully, for the enemy team. And oh look, an Object 277 gets spotted. We deal one shot of damage to him. Can we get another one into him? We're in a nice little crossfire. Yes, we can. Very, very nice. And then he's out of the game. So as I said, it's all about picking up those little bit of hit points where you can get them, and over time it's going to come away with a much better result. And often when you're playing in the bottom tiers of the game, you know, you do have to play quite passively because, yeah, you get hit a few times in the game and you're out of the game. So make sure that you just try and survive, but also be further forward than you would typically expect when you're playing in a lower tier vehicle. Now, am I saying you should be on the front line all of the time? No, use your brain, at least hopefully, to realise that if there's 5 tanks in front of you and I say, oh, maybe you should go in a little bit more. I don't mean YOLO into 5 tanks. I just mean make sure that you're within a decent range to the opponents where you feel like you can have the upper hand, and you're probably going to do better than if you don't do it. And even if you don't, you will have learnt so much in that engagement, rather than getting an extra 1 pen from sitting at the back of the map and getting damage on people that are YOLOing you at the end of the game, who don't care if they take an extra shot of damage. And trust me, you are going to be much, much better off. And that's what I've learnt over the time of playing World of Tanks. And you've seen that in this AMX65T game. You're seeing now, oh god, it's the KPZ. Probably not the tank you want to be seeing, but what we do here is we pull down and we basically just keep him spotted, whilst also being able to, you know, try and deal with this guy. I mean, we have the penetration, we're using premium rounds. Yes, gosh, you might actually have to fire premium rounds when you're in 2 tiers lower. I know people hate the fact that that is the case, but you know, sometimes you do actually have to do it. Unfortunately, we miss on this Sturm Tiger, but he's quite easily focused on someone else, so hopefully we can get a shot into him. There we go, he's out of the game. And picking up 3,100 damage in the process, and 1,450 assistance as well. So it's a pretty decent game, considering that our team are losing pretty badly. And oh gosh, it's the overpowered Centurion AVRE. We love seeing one of those in the game. Yes, not my favourite tank to come up against, but hey ho, at least we know the weak points. I said at least we know the weak points. Maybe we can actually pen this guy. There we go. We do pen him through the side of the tracks, but it's not looking all too good, and yeah, the KPZ just comes around and finishes us off. But with that said, we did pick up nearly 4,000 damage and 1,500 assistance damage, and you can see this 263, who's been sat in base all game, has done only 2,000 damage with 989. I mean, he moved very small kind of distance and didn't really push the flank when he could have, and that really ends up with dealing a hell of a lot less damage than you could potentially do. And there you go, coming top of the team, pretty close to the Progetto in all regards in terms of its damage, and yeah, dealing double the damage of some of the tier 10s in the game. And yeah, and no, I don't blame my team. I could have played better. Could we have moved? Could we have repositioned? Absolutely. Could we have taken a hell of a lot less shots? Should I have just gone for the Centurion AVRE and then avoided being hit by the KPZ? Yes, and we would have been able to survive a little bit longer. Maybe we would have got an extra shot of damage, but I didn't do that. We ended up getting 1 less shot of damage than I could have potentially done. And there you go. But remember, just try and be forward and of course forward thinking, and just make sure that you try and create crossfires. And these are like kind of the core concepts of how you can deal a ton more damage, win more games, and hopefully that all made sense with some examples. And yeah, let me know any other things that you want me to cover, as I'm going to be looking at trying to produce some guides for you, and hopefully this was valuable for you. If it wasn't, let me know please, and I will do back to our regular scheduled programming of, you know, just tank reviews, and I'm happy to do that. But either way, I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.